A lot of people thought I had lost my mind. Like you make, 6-figure salary. And I think I made that summer that I wrangled, I think I made $7 or $8 an hour. Our driveway to get into the ranch was over a mile long, and you had trailers nose to tail, like lined up on the road coming to help get our horses off. Nothing felt safe or stable. And the fire hit the ranch and it hit Grant Lake, and it moved faster than anyone was expecting it to move. And it just felt like the most surreal outer body experience of like watching flames, horses, and then just seeing all of the people coming together to help us. So the humanity piece of it and people coming together, it was just inspiring. I just started having this moment where I was like, I have to write this down. And that is how the book started.
How important was it in that moment that you had that bond and connection to those 200 horses, that you knew them so well in order to cope with the situation unfolding?
Amy Cullen walked away from a promising legal career and towards a rugged life on a ranch, a decision that would thrust her into the path of one of the most devastating wildfires in Colorado's history and lead to a high-stakes mission to rescue more than 200 horses from the flames. This life-altering experience inspired her brand new book called Running Free, a gripping journey that delves into the inner battles that we all face and the freedom that comes when we abandon the lives we think we should be living to embrace who we really are meant to be. So how did Amy stay calm amongst the wildfire and save so many frightened horses? And what did Amy learn from not only her herd of 200 equines, but also from her wild horse wrangling new life on the ranch after leaving behind her safe corporate career? Let's find out, shall we?
Amy, welcome to Curious Equestrian.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, first of all, I've got to ask the question that will be on everyone's minds. What made you want to leave behind a legal career for the ranch life?
Yeah, I don't know if it was anything that I had really planned on doing. When I first said I was going to quit my job and become a wrangler, it was in my mind like a 6-month sabbatical while I was waving into a different bar. So initially I was barred DC and Maryland had reciprocity with Colorado. So it was going to take me about 9 months to get in. So I figured take a break from the law firm and go play cowgirl for a little bit. And that was over 12 years ago now. So I would say I didn't really think about it. It just kind of happened.
And tell us when horses first touched your life, Amy.
Oh gosh, I probably started riding when I was 4 years old. The little girl that had the posters on the wall and wanted to take lessons. So it was one of many after school activities I did. And it was probably the only one I was good at. I wasn't very good at gymnastics or dancing or piano or all the other things my parents made me do. So yeah, and it just one lesson turned into 2 lessons, which turned into 3 lessons. And then I think I got my first horse or pony like 8 or 9. And it just kind of continued on from there.
And what was it about that particular time in your legal career that made you think, I just need time with horses in my life?
I was in my early 30s, so late 20s, early 30s. And I don't know, I probably like everybody that goes to school and graduates, you think when you're done and you get a job, you'll actually have time to and money to do the things that you want to do. And what I realized that happened is the busier and better I got with my career, the less I had time for horses. So it was in the DC area. So obviously there's a lot of traffic. I would get out of work and try to go ride my horses and sit in traffic for a few hours. And then I get to the barn and I was like, I don't even feel like doing this right now. And then I would try to go to a horse show, having not really ridden all week, and go in and like miss at the first jump and be like, why am I doing this? So I think at that point in my life, I'm still trying to compete at a high level. I was still trying to own horses and show horses, and I was boarding them in Maryland with a wonderful trainers and wonderful boarding facility. And I just couldn't like figure out the time. And I was lucky. I had weeks where I was lucky if I saw a horse, and I was like, I went to school. I worked really hard to make money to have time, and there's just no time. And that was probably the struggle. That was like, I just want to break from all the work, and I just want to be able to go ride horses for a little bit before I start another job.
I think a lot
So that was kind of the
I
transition.
think a lot of us can relate to that, and horse owners all over the country, all over the world, listening to this podcast will relate to exactly that. We work hard so that we can keep our horses, but then how much time can we spend with them? What was it like leaving behind the legal career and making the decision to jump into ranch life? Where do you even start?
I mean, probably should back up a little bit. Like, I had gone to the ranch on vacation. So I graduated law school around 2004, and I think my first year going to the ranch was 2006, give or take. And I went with my best girlfriend, who I actually grew up riding with. We showed in like the junior hunters together, and she had gone to the ranch as a kid, and she approached me and asked if I wanted to go on a girls' vacation with her, and her dad was going to pay for everything. And my initial reaction was like, can't we like go to the beach or go someplace warm? Like, I don't necessarily want to go to a dude ranch and ride horses on vacation because we ride anyway. And she was right, and she pretty much told me to shut up. And she's like, you are my only friend who I think is absolutely going to love this. And she was right. And we came on vacation that summer. And within like the first day of riding, my mind was blown. I had never been out west. I'd never ridden out west. Our way of doing horses out here versus what I learned back on the East Coast and like English hunter jumper horse show world was so night and day different. So that week vacation turned into us coming every summer the same week. We had made a ton of friends at the ranch. And so one of those summers while we were just on vacation, I started joking that I was going to quit my job and become a wrangler. And it was just a joke that somehow started getting life of its own. And before you know it, I was like, I think I might actually do this. So it's kind of how it started.
Wow. So when you
Yeah.
broke free of your career at
With
law, did you take all your horses with you to the ranch?
No, so at that point, I didn't own any horses. So I was like late 20s, early 30s. I was riding a lot, like catch riding. I was riding young horses, but I was trying to just like fit it in when I could versus like really committed to owning. So, and it was, and I should say the stars aligned. Like, um, I'd started dating my then husband, but we were very early in or my now husband, we were very early in the relationship. So I didn't have children, I didn't have any sort of ties. And I was like, there's one time in my life, if I'm gonna go do something fun, like this is it. Um before I bought a house and did all those things. So I was still renting an apartment or a townhouse in the area. So I was an easy break for me to leave, and I just was like, let's do it because I know I could come back. Like I know I can get a job in DC or Maryland as an attorney. Like I have good references. So I know if I don't love living in Colorado, I can always come back to the East Coast. So it was just timing. And when I was, dating my husband at the time, he was probably the only person that was really encouraging. A lot of people thought I had lost my mind. They were like, you make, six-figure salary. And I think I made that summer that I wrangled, I think I made $7 or $8 an hour,
Yeah.
and like went from like, I was a grown up in my living on my own and then going into like a bunkhouse type of situation. And I just loved it. It was so much fun. So but it was definitely, you know, you couldn't do all the things that I was used to doing. I just totally shifted and did a lot less. That's the best way to say it.
So you lost your six-figure salary, but
Yes, I definitely did.
money, what did you gain in other ways, Amy, on the ranch?
So that summer when I just was a wrangler, I was a lot older than everyone because I was, like I said, early 30s. And I worked with more 20-year-olds and, kids in college or right out of college. So I just had fun. And I had this like when I was riding horses, it was the first time in my adult life, or for honestly, as long as I can remember, where it wasn't about horse shows or competitions. And it wasn't about constant like I don't as a rider and that showing at a higher level, like I had a tendency to be very hard on myself. And I was so disappointed if I messed up or made mistakes and coming and riding at the ranch and riding so many different type of horses, like I had to let that go. And I think that was the beauty of it. It's like that passion that we all have as children and why we ride because it's fun and it puts a smile on your face was what came back to me that summer as opposed to, just trying to always be perfect and do everything right. And when you have this many horses, I learned very quickly that everything I thought I knew was a small fraction of, what all these horses and being around a herd of 200 for this many years has actually taught me. So there was a lot of just absolute joy that first summer. And I mean, I worked, you get up at 3:45, 4 a.m. and you get home at 6 or 7. And yeah, I was exhausted, but it was amazing.
Wow.
And I made what, 7, $8 an hour.
Wow, what a
So
contrast. We're imagining you as this sort of city slicker lawyer in your, fancy pencil skirt suit and
exactly.
working really long hours and really sort of delving into the high pressures of that career and living and breathing that job and being, in that hierarchy of what happens when you're in a high flying career and making sure you're working hard and keeping up with deadlines and being fully absorbed
Mhm.
to then having that freedom and sense of the wild and being out with the animals that you love, surrounded by nature. And I imagine tough work, really hard work, but how did it compare with pressure and expectations of your previous career?
Well, that summer, just as a seasonal wrangler, because that's how I started here, because it was literally a 6-month break in my mind of what I was doing. It was great because I felt like I had a ton of responsibilities, but not really, because I wasn't a boss, I wasn't in charge of anything. My number one goal was to do right by the horses and have fun with the guests and the members and the people that come to the ranch. And I had more training and lessons than anybody that at that time that probably worked. So I naturally just really loved teaching and introducing horses to people that were like, my wife wanted to come on a vacation because she loves horses, but here I am, and I don't know if I really want to do this. Like, and it just became, I just loved it because one thing about being an attorney, um, you kind of are always, with people that are in a lawsuit for a reason and they're not always happy.
Yeah.
And then I shifted to a place where everyone comes on vacation and they're leaving their life behind. And everybody I interacted with was so happy. They were falling in love with horses. I just loved it. Like there was not a day that I went home where I was like, that was not a good day at work. It was just wonderful from the beginning.
Wow.
Before we continue, I just want to take a moment to say a huge thank you to all the supporters that make this show happen, our incredible Curious Equestrian community. Many of you have asked how we can keep in touch between episodes. Well, we've created something super special just for you, the Curious Equestrian newsletter. You'll gain access to our personal insights on every interview, articles written by guest speakers and authors, plus equine experts who are challenging what we think about our horses. If you're as passionate as we are about challenging the status quo and pushing boundaries in the horse world, then you will love our newsletter. Head on over to curiousequestrian.co.uk to join our newsletter community. Right, let's jump back into the discussion, shall we?
And Amy,
So
I'm just getting such vivid pictures in my head right now of your life on the ranch. Since I was a teenager, I used to say it was my dream. I saw one of those holiday packages that you could, for a lower amount, for a lower flight fee and accommodation fee you could go and
Yeah.
work on an American ranch, which, being a country music lover and a lover of sort of American life and horses and that wild sense of freedom, I thought that's my dream. I want to do it. At some point, I'm going to take a 3 to 6 month gap year and I'm going to go out on this American ranch. Because also I'm very a country life liver. I love fence post bashing and I've got an animal sanctuary with my mum. So I'm always doing, hay bale lifting and muck shoveling. So I thought, I'm strong.
Yeah.
I can cope with the work demands. I'm going to do this. But of course, life takes off, doesn't it? And you go to university and you get into your broadcasting career, and then you go up the ranks, and then you take on more and more responsibility. And we've got rescue animals, myself and my mum, with a sanctuary, and you just put it off and you don't go to the American ranch. So I really feel a sense of connection to you as someone who is living that wild life that I never got to lead. Can you tell us what an average day in the life is of a horse wrangler and what that means to those of us in England that not sure what
Sure.
means?
Yeah, so I work at the Silesia Ranch, so it's in Granby, Colorado, and we're actually unique where we are a guest ranch, but we're year round. So
What?
I get the joy of doing horses in the winter that's when it's negative 20 something degrees out, so you get that side of it.
What?
Um but it's a year-round guest ranch, but it also has a member component. So it's a ranch where people come and go like I did as a guest, and then you have members that own second homes here that also come and go. So it's a bigger ranch. We have well over 200 horses. And then currently, I oversee everything that has anything to do with a horse. So you have a children's program. So if you're vacationing with your children, from age 6 on, you get a horse for the entire week. So as a 6-year-old, you're adventuring on the trails with other 6-year-olds, 7-year-olds. And we have, the best and oldest kids' horses that just take care of these little kids, all the way up to people like myself that have a lot of experience or ride professionally. So you have all different levels of riders and ages that come every week. We have on average about 95 guests in the summer, and that number will fluctuate as the year goes. And then, like I said, you have members and then their guests on top of it. So it is a giant operation. And the best way to kind of explain is the membership, it kind of operates as a country club. They'll, instead of, signing up for a tea time, they'll basically be able to go on a trail ride, or a lot of them own their own horses and take lessons with me now. Um, but as a wrangler, seasonal wrangler, we'll start in the summer is probably the best example because that's when the prime riding season, I would say, is May through mid-October, where the weather here is just unbelievable. But yeah, so our goal is to have the herd in every single day by 6 a.m. And the ranch is over 8,200 acres. So we'll pasture the horses on all different parts of the ranch. And so if you're jingling that morning, and what the jingle is what we refer to bringing in the herd. So story goes, back in the day, they used to tie like cowbells on some of the horses so you could hear where they were in the thick forest or willows. So we'll have pastors that sometimes require us to be on our horses by 4 a.m. because it takes 2 hours to go find them and bring them in. Um, other pastures you get on at 5:30 and they're in 30 minutes. So it just depends on where we're jingling and if you're on the jingle team that morning as a wrangler. So yeah, so the herd is usually in by 6 a.m. And then we start pulling and catching all the horses that we're using that day. So we usually get all the kids' horses and teen horses ready first, and then they get saddled, go to a different area. They get their feed, their supplements, whatever they need, and then we bring the adult horses in, saddle them, um, and give them all their feed. Then we have another crew that's behind the scenes doing vet care, working on facilities, feeding the old guys that require special diets. I mean, it is a giant or like operation. And then in the summer, we start putting the little kids on at 8:45. So a lot of these, visitors to the ranch, aren't horse riders or people. So you're going over how to hold the reins, how to get on and off, and very basic orientations. And then as the week progresses for the guests on vacation, the experience progresses. So your first ride is, a little bit slower, like somebody tells me they're advanced and they get on and their hands are crossed. You're like, okay, probably not. Um, so you kind of go through the motion, and then by the end of the week, we do 2 trail rides every single day. Like I said, it varies what we do for all the different age levels. But someone like you that comes out that wants to ride horses, um, and you have a background, you'll get on a horse that's more sensitive, that you don't really need to kick to ask it to do anything. Just really sensitive, fun horses, and you get to trail ride twice a day. Um, and there's so much like terrain around here, and it's not all just we have a lot of like meadows and valleys where you can get these nice long lopes or gallops in. And it's glorious riding. And then we'll do cows one day a week in the summer. And then I teach clinics a lot during the summer and lessons. And we have an obstacle course where you can go take your horse, go on a little trail ride out to an obstacle course where we have teeter totters and bridges and balance beams, like to just how good of a rider are you? So that easy. And then at the end of the week, every summer, in the summer, we put on a little show, which is our version of like demonstration of horse skills. And the 3 to 5 year olds, they get to ride in our wagon with our draft team pulling them, and they're all just like waving to their parents, and they all get a ribbon. And then,
Oh,
yeah, and then once they're 6, all the way up to 99 or 106, I guess, anybody can participate in the show. So we'll get people that, want to go in and like ride for time and ride,
wow.
like real competition. And then you'll get your 85-year-old grandma that wants to go in and do it for her grandkids that might just try to trap through the poles. And that's like, so it's just like the best way to explain a week. It's just joyous, and it's fun to just watch people fall in love with horses that might not necessarily have done so before. And then they'll leave a vacation or leave the ranch, and they'll go take lessons, or they'll go pursue it at home. Or people like myself go back in, like how I was, will go back into that like competition world and have a whole new perspective of why they're doing it as well.
Well, Amy, thank you for giving us such a vivid description. I think we were all there with you just now on the ranch. And it sounds what a wonderful and exciting adventure week by week. And you mentioned the 200 horses that you work with. What lessons have you learnt from the herd on a day-to-day basis?
Well, it is a very hard question to answer because um every time I think I know what I'm doing, another new horse comes in, and we've learned very quickly you have to change your thoughts. Um, I have learned so much. Like, it is the West. When I first got out here, the veterinary stuff, for example, is different than back home. How like I own my mares, I own my geldings. They had their stalls. They went out in a paddock for, night turnout or a couple hours a day, depending on what I was doing with them at the time. And I had never seen 200 plus horses just living together. So I learned right off the bat, and I'm still learning, just the herd dynamics and watching these horses interact and communicate with one another. And then like the importance of leadership among horses. Like it just has been, and I think that's part of the reason why I've stayed here as long as I have. It's I every if you every day you just learn something. Um, and it's fun to ride Western. I mean, if you watch me ride, you clearly know I grew up riding English, which is I always joke about because it's hard for me to get the arch out of my back and take my belly button to my belt buckle and all this stuff I'm trying to do as a Western rider. But it just being around a herd of that many horses, like I've seen illnesses, I've seen sicknesses, I've seen awful colics, I've seen broken legs. I've just seen things that I never saw before. Um, I've had to do emergency field work on horses that got stuck in fences. Like there's just stuff where you're like, you just figure it out because we're all horse people. Um, And you have to have a team of really good people around you as well. I mean, it's an impossible feat to do any of it on your own. Um, so I think to me that is what is, and honestly, getting out of the arena was that was a big hard thing for me initially, where you're jingling with 200 horses and you're galloping and there's ditches and rocks and mud and hills and just to like let that like bit of like that I'm no longer in the arena. Like the first time I remember riding on a trail and coming head to head with a moose, like they had no idea what to do. And all the horses wanted to go the other way. So it's like, it's just stuff like that that I can't even put into words because that is like what an everyday, what it's like every day. But me back east, like in the way I grew up riding, it was structured. Yeah, my lessons, schooling, went to horse shows, you schooled, you practiced, the horses were lunged. Um, you would go on hacks outside of the arena, but it was like, watch the footing, be careful, because the horses were, really expensive. And I remember, like, even as a guest, my friend and I, loping on one of those big lope rides with the more advanced riders, and we're loping over rocks and uneven footing. And I was like, oh my gosh. But you realize that we can do it. Horses are made for it. And my horses back east lived in a heated barn and wore blankets. These guys here, it's negative. I don't know. It gets cold here, and they live outside and grow big, thick coats, and they're totally fine. So it's just learning. I learned from being here how to do horses differently, and I guess I've just learned more about them in like the journey of life, like everybody that has horses.
Amy, what do you
So.
do when you come face to face with a moose?
What do I do? I'm still a bit of a chicken. I don't come face to face anymore because I'm a little smarter. Um, but yeah, so the funny thing is, if you listen to the horses, they usually tell you that there's one in the area. And when I was new, I was like, why is my horse going forward? Like, like I must get after him. Like, so, and now I'm a little bit smarter. So if the horses act like there's something ahead, I pretty much believe that there's something ahead. And usually, just now, if the moose will flush out and they don't want to be near you, they want to run the other way. The only time you'll get in trouble is if you get between like a mom and a baby. So I think listening to the horses and not thinking I know everything was probably how I handle it now.
Incredible. I love that when you go out on an adventure with your horse, it is a case of being so in tune for both of your survival because you could encounter extreme elements like coming face to face with a moose. And I think even though
Yeah.
here in England we're not going to come face to face with a moose, you tap into something that we all need to do when we're out adventuring with our horses, whether it's doing some long distance riding or whether it's just going hacking around the block and being in tune because a pheasant could flush out of the bush or a rabbit could rush across the track and spook our horses. We may not have mooses, but we may encounter a fox that startles the animal. And
Yeah.
actually listening to our horses and trusting that they can hear or sense something that we can't is so important, isn't it, in that bond and relationship when we go further from the yard or the ranch.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And that was another thing that I think was very new to me is, I horse showed, and you have such a bond when you're showing your horse. So but it's different out here. Like like almost like this is my teammate, I'm working together, like we're on an adventure together. Like if I have to get off and fix a fence, like you need to stay there and help, not go anywhere. So it was just different. And I just loved it. Like I said, it just brought back the reasons I think in my mind why I started riding horses as a kid.
And I'm so thankful to my mum who would seek out when I was a child stables that I could go to that had the facilities to let me go hacking and to go jumping
Mhm.
cross country and to go galloping through the woods and across beaches and actually like you described let go of how you look in the saddle or how something feels in the arena. Are you turning the perfect circle? Are you getting the
Yeah.
right lead and or the right leg? Or are you jumping and folding in the right position? Because actually when you're cantering and heading towards logs or you're ducking under low branches, it's about
Yeah.
connection
with the horse, isn't it? And about what you do in that moment and how you tackle it together rather than how you look and the marks you might get.
Exactly. I mean, you just nailed it. It's exactly what it was for me. It was just pure joy and pure fun again. So that was the reason I think it's honestly the reason I haven't left. I just love it. Like there's not a day of work where you're like, it's work. So there's obviously days where you're like, well, that was not a great day. But there's more days where you just leave work and you're like, I am so fortunate to be here. And there's something to be said. I was a bit of a snob coming here, even as a guest, on like what a dude ranch horse is and what they have to do. Um, it, it's amazing. Like our horses, like as the longer they're here, and we've had horses that live their whole lives here, they're able to just deal with rider after rider, week after week, that doesn't actually know what they're doing. They're pulling and kicking and they're not releasing pressure at the right time. And they're just so willing and happy to be doing their jobs. And that was also a learning experience for me. Like, not just it's okay if people don't ride correctly. Like the horses are okay. And I had to really understand that. Um, and like witness it. And I've witnessed it over and over and over again. Or horses that, they get a little angry at times and they need breaks and they get tired. But that's normal. But it's pretty amazing all the different levels of horses and what they're able to tolerate. And things, coming out here, I learned a lot more about natural horsemanship and a lot more of like groundwork and all the desensitizing. And I kind of wish I could go back in time and do it with some of my bigger show horses. So,
And tell us about the ranch because it is legendary in its horsemanship. Why has it got
yeah,
that reputation?
it's been around for over 100 years. We're on our 105th year as a guest ranch this year. And it is, it puts horsemanship and horses first. Like it is a working horse ranch. And the children's program and the horse program are kind of at the core, I think, of what set it aside, back in the day when they first established it. But how we take care of the horses here, how we work the horses, the wranglers that I hire are all coming from all different backgrounds. So everybody is bringing their knowledge and their experiences into the program, to kind of, I mean, I learn from people I hire all the time. And I think that is kind of why I think it excels so much. Like when I came on, my predecessor, I mean, he was incredible. Like, and I had never been around a horseman like him before. And he had learned a lot well before I got here. Like Buck Brenneman used to put clinics on at the ranch. So the history of horsemanship here, now we're fortunate we get Julie Goodnight a couple times a year and she comes in. And so it puts it as a priority. And I think that's what makes it stand out. Like you can go to other ranches and other, resorts and sign up for a horseback ride while you're on vacation. You have that option. And here you're coming on vacation to ride a horse. You're coming here, especially in our peak riding season. Like I said, we are open year round. So the program changes depending on who's coming and going. But you're coming, at least I was coming as a guest to basically have one of the best weeks of my year riding horses. And that priority is the reason I rebooked and came to the same vacation every year after. And we have guests that have come for over 50 years in a row. And they come the same week with the same family, or they came as a kid and now they're bringing their family. So there's like a legacy, I think, where people just want to keep coming back as well and over again.
Wow.
And like I said, you become part of this ranch family with this hospitality and horse, and you fall in love with your horse and you want to come back and ride it next year. And so that's kind of, I think, the draw of why the horse program is so successful here. It remains a priority.
And it sounds like there's a great level of respect between you and the other
trainers and horsemanship leaders, if you like. There's a real sense of learning from each other, but I also love hearing the respect that you have for the horses, and that actually if some of them are tired, or as you described, if they're feeling a bit angry, you think they need a break, they get that breather and that time away because you're listening to what they need.
Yeah, 100%. Like, I mean, you, as my, probably the most important part of my job is to pay attention. To pay attention how the guests are treating their horse that week, to pay attention to how the wranglers are interacting with the horses, to pay attention to the horse's body language. Are they stiff? Or, so you have to pay attention. And the better you get, the more observant you are. You can see things before they're happening. But yeah, I we will rotate, we will rest. If a horse looks like they're just over being ridden by many, many, many guests over and over again, we'll turn him into a jingle horse. We'll put him into doing more liberty or groundwork for, so we'll switch it up. And a horse that like one of my main horses for a long time was not never going to be a guest horse because he was so reactive. So he started doing a lot of work with corporate groups and a lot of round pen work, getting people in and using their body language. And now he's become one of my best lesson horses. He's still good cross country for people that are good riders, but I can put kids on him and they can do anything in the arena, or they can go the opposite course. So it's like, I think that's another thing. You asked me this question a little while ago, what I've learned, and I can keep going back to it because this is another big area for me, is that I don't put time limits on anything. If one horse could get in the guest ring the second week he's here, another horse, it might take 15 years. But as long as they're being useful to the program and enhancing the experience here for people, they have a job. Um, your old kid's horse that is too, arthritic to go on actual trail rides becomes the world's greatest pony ride horse, and the little kids can hang on him and brush him and paint his feet pink or whatever they want to do. Um and that, as long as the horse is still enjoying it, the horse still has a place here. And we have, like I said, we have a couple 3-year-olds right now that we have to get started still. So for ages 3 all the way up until I think my oldest horse is about to be 33 this year.
Wow.
So it's just like, and you realize that what you think they're supposed to do, and you can't just say, well, this horse was a good guest horse for all these years. Yeah, he might have been, and now he's at that point in his career where he needs a break. He needs better riders. He needs somebody that telling him that he's doing the right thing as opposed to keep kicking. So you do have to move them around and understand the horses to be able to manage that many.
And that level of understanding and knowing your horses inside out, their characters, their personalities, and where they are in their career and in their life, it is so inspiring to hear, because it sounds like you've matched them so well to the job they do, making sure that they want to be there, that they want to do those interactions, that they want that job, or you find them something better suited, which is so lovely when we know there are still stables and yards and ranches that exist where it doesn't really matter what the horse has to say. They have to do the job that the human gives to them, which is soul destroying for the horses and for us horse lovers and those into, you know, progressing our way of thinking and progressing our bonds and our relationships with horses. It's depressing to think that that still goes on and exists. So it's fantastic to hear what you're doing. Where do your horses go once they say, do you know what, I can't do this anymore and I need retirement?
Yeah, that's a great question. And that is actually a question that's very near and dear to my heart. Because when I first got here, um, it was how a lot of things were done out west and out east too. I mean, just the horse world in general. They used to just ship off to auction and most likely went to the slaughter pipeline. And I had this moment like my first summer, like being like, wait, what? And there was just no other way at that point. Like, so now, a couple early in, I've been doing it now for many years. I got hooked up with a really amazing girl who actually is from England. Her name was Jackie Avis, and she was running a horse rescue outside of Denver, Colorado, called Drifters Hearts of Hope. And her and I kind of put our heads together, and she created what's called the Annie Project. which is a place for retired dude and like camp horses to go. And rescues will help rehome them. And I worked with her and we've rehomed so many horses. Either they're too old or too arthritic, or they're, and like a lot of times our horses will leave the mountains and go down to the front range where the climate's a little bit more mild, the footing's a little bit, not as treacherous. They'll live in a stall, have a paddock, and have another 5 or 6 years of a great working life. And for a rider that wants to trail ride on the weekend. So it's like there's a lot of opportunity to rehome the horses. And that is probably the biggest thing that we've done. Um, and we've rehomed horses that just didn't want to be dude or guest horses. So that's what we do now. All the horses have a second opportunity to either go retire in luxury somewhere or go on to a second career, or they live here and die here. And we'll put them down when they can't do another winter or whatever we have to do. But for the most part, it's all about prioritizing the horse. And it's funny, like think about when I started that 2012, like social media was a thing, but it's become more and more of a thing. And I think technology and just where we are in the world, you can't, nobody can get away with not doing right by the horse anymore. So it just was an opportunity for the ranch to put itself out there as like, this is who we are. These animals are really, they're the most important thing to what makes our ranch great. And we're going to do right by them. And my general manager at the time was absolutely incredible and like, supporting me and making sure it happened. And it was a wonderful thing. And now I have people that own Sealay's U horses that will call me up. I just retired this amazing horse that's been here for forever, to a little girl that rode her while she was here on vacation. And her family lives outside of Charleston on this beautiful, beautiful equestrian property. And this one of my horses is like living the life of luxury with her 6 year old little child. And she's 25 years old. So it's a great way to end her career with us. And the thing that I liked about working with the rescue is they held on to the brand for a year or two, and they would do the inspections on the places and the properties that the horses were going to. And now we're working with the Colorado Horse Rescue to do the same thing.
Wow.
So it's a pretty amazing program.
Well, thank you for doing what you've done, make change for the horses at the ranch. And also thank you for being honest and sharing that journey with us, because it's showing the real progression that is coming in, thanks to you and your forward way of thinking, and actually saying change needs to happen here for the horses in order to give them a better life. But also it shows us the inspiration that can happen, and hopefully that will spread to those places that sadly are still stuck in very old traditional ways that mean the horses don't have the same ending as the horses now do at your ranch.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I just think that's the evolution of learning and knowing the sport, and knowing horses. Like, you, you can't, I just don't agree with when they've worked so hard for you and brought in so much joy and income to just be like, okay, now we're done with you. Like, no, we have to do right by them because they've been nothing but great for us for years and years. And I'm very fortunate to work for a ranch that puts that as a priority.
And Amy, tell us about your new book, because I asked now about the wildfire that's been such an inspiration behind your new book, which was one of the worst wildfires to ever hit Colorado. Before we talk about putting that into fiction, tell us what happened to you for real.
So that the East Troublesome Fire was hit us in October of 2020. So about 4 years ago, actually right around, we're kind of right in the thick of it. I think it was October 20th that it kind of hit the ranch. And I had, it just was one of those, you know, events that I could never have prepared myself for. You hear about natural disasters. I watch them on the news, like all the hurricanes that just hit back east. I'm watching them on the news. Like, so I'd always you knew things happened, but it never happened to me. And it always seemed like it happened in other places and other areas. And that particular summer, it was a very dry summer in Colorado, and we had wildfires burning kind of, it seemed like all over the state. So you were always, fires are just a thing. And I just didn't realize going into it that it was actually going to become a reality for us. And about when the fire started, we we were paying attention to it, and it was close, and it seemed like people were working on it. It seemed like it was under control, and then it just really wasn't. And it when it wasn't under control is when it got scary. So I'd say a week before the fire actually hit the ranch, like the smoke in the air, a couple of days before we evacuated the horses and closed down for the first time, it was unbelievable. Like, it was so thick, like your eyes would burn. You'd ride and your horse's mane would have ash in it. And so my initially was like, oh, this is like scary. And I was like, what do we do? And everyone was like, well, what do you do? You're in charge. And I was like, oh gosh, I guess I am. Um, so I like, we had an old barn which actually burned in the fire, and my predecessor had a little file on what fire history, and it was something about like this very old west, like, let flood the pastures, cut the fence, push the herd this direction. And I was like, okay, noted. And so when that I had started leaving horses in, like, a little bit more, just for the fear of, like, what if I have to move the horses? Like, I need lead mares. I need my best jingle horses. So, going into that pre-evacuation, that first day, I was ready, but what I realized a couple days before that was like, this is a dumb plan. Like, where are they going to go? Like, it's not like I'm pushing them into a beautiful open valley. Like, I'm pushing them into other houses. So, um, or other areas of Grand County where the ranch is, and it just didn't make sense. So, I had sat down with my general manager at the time, and he had found two neighbors that were out of the pre-evacuation zone that were willing to take our horses, which then became, we had two giant fields, and we then combined them into a 250-acre pasture. And what happened for the first pre-evacuation was we just got on social media. The team of girls that worked for me, the general manager, his family, like the owners, like, people got on social media, and before you know it, just in our county, in our community, our driveway to get into the ranch was over a mile long, and you had trailers nose to tail, like, lined up on the road coming to help get our horses off. So that was the first time we evacuated, and that was hard, but it was rewarding. It was organized. The horses were in the corral. Like, I could organize them to get them on the trailers the right way. The team of wranglers that worked for me were, some of them were loading, people were reporting where they were going, some of the wranglers went to help unload them at the properties. So it was a giant undertaking, but it was organized. And then a week later, this is where I, for the first time, like, realized that, oh wow, like, we are probably not okay. Is the our safe pasture then went under pre-evacuation or evacuation, because the fire, um, why it was under control for a long time, once it hit where we are, I should back up even more. Earlier in, like, the early 2000s, there was a beetle epidemic here where this pine beetle came, and so you had all these dead trees. And so when the fire came to our area, it went it just flew. And the wind went crazy. It is like, almost like, the way I can describe it, and I'm no expert, but it was like it started creating its own weather, and everything just got, I mean, the winds, and nothing felt safe or stable. So the night before we had to evacuate the horses for the second time, the fire hit the ranch, and it hit Grant Lake, and it moved faster than anyone was expecting it to move. And it was scary. I had friends that lost their homes, and it was just I realized that next day I went into like another Zoom meeting with ownership and my manager, and we realized very quickly that like nobody actually knew what was happening. And I remember being on the call, and there was another pasture, closer to Winter Park, which is another few miles down the road, that was out of the evacuation zone. And I just had this moment. I was like, I don't feel comfortable just like, can we just get out of the county? Like, can we just go somewhere? And a couple weeks before the fire hit us, I had gone with the owner of the ranch to ride obstacles at a farm outside of Denver. It's called oh Solid Rock Ranch, and it was a trail obstacle place because at that point we were talking about bringing trail obstacles onto the ranch. And I just started like in that moment of full chaos, there was like clarity of like, I should give him a call. And his name was Jim Goff. And he immediately opened his property to all of our
Wow.
horses. And it was in where we are, so we're on the top of other side of Berthoud Pass. So all the horses had to be trailered over Berthoud Pass to Evergreen, Colorado. Which also meant when the fire hit us that everybody in the county was now trying to get their horses out. So all the help I had had before, I now all of a sudden was a little bit scarier because we were waiting for hours for trailers to show, hoping trailers would show up. And somebody, my husband actually pulled me aside and he's like, when we call it, you're gonna have to go cut that fence and let these horses just go. And I was like, okay, no problem, I'll do that. But it was like that moment of like, don't cry, keep it together. Um, and it didn't happen. The wind shifted again, so it felt less intense. And once that wind shifted, the trailers started rolling in, and they rolled in. And this is like I will never forget this because it was the entire state of Colorado, the horse the horse community. I mean, it rose, and it everybody people were hooking up trailers. We had to just come help rescue all of our horses. So the humanity piece of it and people coming together, it was just inspiring. And that was after we were safe and we were living in Evergreen. I was stayed with the horses for the 2 weeks until we were able to come back. I just started having this moment where I was like, I have to write this down. And that is how the book started, but it was a long process through that whole thing. But it just felt like the most surreal outer body experience of like watching flames, horses, and then just seeing all the people coming together to help us. It was amazing. And I just felt like it should not be lost in and not forgotten because it was just one of those moments where I felt very proud to be part of the horse community, and I felt proud to be part of the ranch, and it was just a great experience. So
Wow.
my fire was awful, and people lost their lives and homes were lost, and it was an awful experience. There was a bright light in it that I chose to focus on, which is why I wanted to kind of put it in writing.
And when you started writing the book, it was going to originally be your memoir and your recollections
Yeah.
of what happened. At what point did you think, actually, this needs to be fictional?
So I guess when I started writing the book, in my mind, I was not even writing a book. I thought I was just going to write like a short story about the fire and what happened. And a couple of years, I think it was like 2019, I had worked with Noel Floyd, which is an equestrian publication, and gotten an article written about leaving my law firm to go work on a dude ranch. And I had a lot of people reach out to me about it and like, I want to do this. How do you do it? And I was doing calls all the time, just like talking to other horse people that were felt stuck. And so that was in my head of like, oh, there might be something there. And then when we started writing, I worked with this guy named Howard out of San Francisco with a company called Let's Write Books, and he helped me through the entire process Because I will admit, my first version of the fire and what happened, it was probably a 70-page legal brief. It read very factual because I wasn't thinking creatively. I just wanted to make sure I had every fact right in my mind of what I remembered happened. And he helped me get out of the box. And I'm sure he wanted to kill me a few times in the process because it changed my mind so many times. But I just didn't want to also really write about myself. Like
And I
my
guess that's the attorney was still in you there, and it was coming.
yeah, yeah. It just felt like, so the character in the book is based on me. All the characters and the people, that's all fictionalized. I mean, obviously I left my law firm and I'm at a ranch. So that theme has carried through, but there's so many things that have been made up and embellished just because it's a better read that way with fictionalizing the characters and the people around the events. Then the truth of life is I go home every day and go to bed by 8 o'clock. Like I'm not that much fun to read about. So it made it more fun to kind of bring in a little drama. And I always had this vision of, it just seemed like something that could be more in terms of entertainment. And I kind of looked at the book. It's like, I'm going to put this out there and maybe one day it'll become more because it is fun. It is like East Coast meets West Coast, or Western riding, and hunter jumper world meets dude ranching and cows, and but it's combined all the time. And you're a ranch, so there's storylines from guests coming, from people working, and it just felt like there was something there that I just thought, well, I'll put it out there. I really wanted to write something. And the attorney in me has, well, my resume, like I need to kind of continue to be a professional. So that was part of why I wanted to write it as well.
And writing the wildfire into the book, how therapeutic was that, if it was at all, or how aggravating was it to recount what happened and to write it out, to get it on the page and to include it in the book?
Yeah, it was great. And I mean, it was therapeutic because I wrote, like I said, I wrote probably a lot of it fire-wise after the fire. So just to like relive it and remember it and the feelings and the thoughts and the motions, like I needed to put that on paper. And I don't really think about it at the time, but it probably was my way of like dealing with it. Um and it was kind of like, I think I'm going to write a book, or I'm going to write a story about this. And, the part of me also was like, maybe it'll help somebody because, like myself, like I was so out of my element in the beginning, like guessing what we should be doing and trying to figure it out. And I didn't have like anybody that was like, oh, I've been through this before. This is what you got to do. Or here, this is what we're going to do. I'm going to help you. And I had this moment of like, well, if this even helps somebody understand like how naive I was going into this, then it's a good thing.
And what did you learn about yourself when writing your main character, Emmy, who is based on you? How did it feel writing a character that was based on elements of your personality and focusing on the way that your life changed, but from that sort of backseat perspective almost?
It was fun, and I had fun writing the character, and I kind of took things about myself that I thought were a little bit more annoying, or like it can be a little bit over dramatic and neurotic, that like East Coast comes out of me where I'm like I go to a very high level quickly. So I had fun kind of playing around with that a little bit, and like just the inner journey of leaving the law firm to go play cowgirl. And it's a scary thing when you have student loans and you've invested so much of your time into something. I wanted to play on that a little bit just because I felt like that was another catch. Like even a non-horse person might be reading it and feel like I'm a little stuck. Maybe I should take that opportunity, or maybe I should go travel with my girlfriend a place that I don't actually want to go. So I just that was important, and I enjoyed kind of evolving that character based on that a little bit more.
And what, after the readers have finished your book, what messages do you hope that they're left with, and what sort of impact do you hope they feel when they pop the book down?
I think for me, it's getting out of your boxes. Like, I feel like that's the impact. Like, obviously, it's an amazing story. There's horses and fire, so there's entertainment. But the biggest thing I think is getting out of your box. Like, we tend to be as a woman or even a young woman. And I see this for a lot of the young women that work for me. Like, I just graduated. I'm taking this time off to ride here and do this, but I'm going to go back and I'm going to get this horse so I can horse show. I need to get married. I need to marry a guy with money so I can afford horses. I need, like, I mean, it just is every day that I work with these young girls. And I must go do this. My degree was in this. And they're struggling to like figure it out. And what I realized is I was the exact same way. I wanted to get my college degree, get my law degree, go join a law firm, get my amateur hunter, my amateur jumper, take my lessons, show. Yeah, and I just never thought outside of the box until I was at that point where I was like, I am somehow living a life that is not does not make me happy. And I feel like that is the biggest thing I want to get for people to get out of the book. And like, yeah, if you have a connection or a journey with horses, even better. It's the most rewarding one, I think the most rewarding thing that you can possibly put into your life. But I think that to me is one of the most reason I really wanted to put it out there and the book out there is you just don't be a snob. Don't look down on the dude horse. Don't look down on the your neighbor who does something different than you. There is a lot of that in horse world where everybody thinks something different. And I think the best trainers and the best riders and the people that I'm around with the most have opened their minds to learning as much as they can about horses and about opportunities. And you might be on one path and then all of a sudden an opportunity presents itself and you're like, you should, if you can, you should be willing to take those chances and those opportunities.
And before you go, I've got to ask you about the moment in the wildfire with the herd of horses, 200 that you've got to evacuate. How important was it in that moment that you had that bond and connection to those 200 horses, that you knew them so well in order to cope with the situation unfolding?
It was extremely important because my team and I we strategized how we were going to load them. And we learned very quickly you can't separate friend groups, especially in a herd like this. And especially when all that energy, because everybody was elevated running around. I mean, nothing about it was calm, cool, and collected because of the intimate fear of what was about to happen. Um, so it was important to understand who the horses were friends with. And if I put, for example, a lead mare on, 6 other geldings were just going to follow her right onto that trailer. So it made loading horses and how we organized it pretty it, that was important. And I think if we had tried to just hand horses to random people, but what we ended up doing was saying, you're going to take this group will get on your trailer. You put the one most confident horse first that it wasn't going to give you any sort of issue with loading. And it was pretty easy. All their friends just kind of followed them on. And I think out of our 200 plus horses, there was less than half a dozen that even gave us a hard time. And then the one horse that I kind of highlight in the book that gave us the hardest time, um, her story like has not left me either because you saw this one horse, like she didn't care at that point where her friends went. She just was so resistant and so like, kind of load her in these dark trailers. So out of all the horses, it there were so few that they're unwilling. And I just feel like that's a testament to how the ranch for decades has done horsemanship here and how they prioritize feel and the horse trusts the human here. And with that trust, a lot can get accomplished. And that was very, very evident to me during the evacuation of the fire and the trailering and all of that.
And it comes back to what we were talking about, coping with the unexpected, being in tune with your horse, out,
Yeah.
out cross country, out on the trail, out hacking. If you deal with a wild moose or a rabbit or a pheasant or something that spooks your horse, well, scale that up thousands of times to a wildfire. And it's a similar thing that you're tapping into, that connection, that relationship, that instinct that you can't put into
Yeah.
words, you can't describe. but it's there and you're all feeling it and you're all having to deal with it together.
Yeah, I mean, the horses had to trust us. We were putting them into strange trailers. I mean, it was every type of trailer imaginable. You had your beautiful polo rigs with shavings and lights all the way to your cattle trailer. And like I didn't care. They were just going into trailers. And so they had to trust us and to load that many horses that quickly and that type of energy. That was like I can't highlight enough that group of women that worked with me, because it was, yes, there was a lot of people helping us and a lot, there are men too, but like my core group was young females and they worked their butts off, and it was awesome. It was an awesome experience to like witness, and there were moments where you did have to step back and be like, I can't believe we're pulling this off, but it was incredible.
And a fascinating read, because the wildfire and the evacuation, all true to life, as you mentioned, you wrote it down in every detail so that it's all factually correct. But then the story built around with drama and fiction, making for an extraordinary read. So, Amy, for those listening who think, I want a copy of Amy's new book, how can they find it? Where can they do that?
It's available on Amazon. I also have a website that links you to Amazon, which is runningfreehorses.com. But the book is running free and you can get it on Amazon. It's a quick, easy, fun. You can read it in a day. It's an easy page turner. So it's not like, it's just meant to be a fun, easy read that's based in reality.
Amy, thank you so much for coming on and sharing with us your really unique life with horses. Thank you so much for listening to and watching Curious Equestrian. If you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube so that you don't miss an episode and all that's coming your way, or you can subscribe to us on whatever podcast platform you listen. If you could leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, that would really help us to find lots more lovely listeners. And you can also follow us on Instagram @Curious Equestrian Podcast. We'll see you next time.